Take up yoga, you'll find it beneficial, man. Calm yourself. You may be a cheeky chappy, but you're also an exceptionally noisy one.
I wasn't, Antonello, to be honest, remotely conscious of the slightest level of interest in the British Parliament in Europe until very recently. And moreover, it follows from that the idea that I was aware that there was any significant interest in me as Speaker in Europe was for the birds. It's an expression we use, meaning out of the question. I would never have thought of such a thing.
You are well-intentioned and principled, but you are overexcitable and you need to contain yourself. It requires you to take some medicament, then so be it.
Some people have commented on the way in which I speak. Some people are amused by the constant invocation of order, unashamedly sartorial comment. People commenting on what I am wearing, and in particular, perhaps my ties. All I can say is, what you see is what you get, Antonello. I am who I am. It's not a performance, it's not an act, it's not a contrivance. There's no artifice in me. That's not me. You may think, wow, he's really strange. And fine, no. But it's me. You know, the way I speak is the way I've spoken since I was a kid. I inherited my speaking style from my father, who tended to speak in paragraphs. Yeah. And, you know, my taste in ties, well, it's just my taste in ties. I'm not saying I criticise your taste in ties or your taste in ties. It's just me. And if people like it, great. That's nice. But if people say, ugh, it's perfectly ghastly, well, fine. That's up to them.
Order. Order.
The use of the word order to start the proceedings goes back centuries in the House of Commons, so it's not something invented by me. Particular mannerisms, particular expressions, you know, are more mine, they're more personal. Do I think about the theatricality? You know, I suppose to an extent. I think that it's not a performance, but I think that it is better to try to handle things with a degree of humour, if possible, rather than everything being deadly serious. A little gentle, why not? So it just occurred to me on the spur of the moment one day, I just said, Zen! Patience. Patience.
This is intolerable behaviour as far as the public... No, it's not funny.
You know, I enjoyed speaking. And I think then after that, I think maybe there were two influences, maybe. One was that my father, although he was not active politically at all, he was very conservative, he wasn't active politically, he was an armchair politician, you know, he would pontificate from his armchair. Yeah. But he spoke well, and that was probably an influence on me. He thought it was important to speak well, coherently, fluently, grammatically. And I think maybe the fact that I was quite a small boy, and there were bigger boys around me, I think that if they used their fists, I used to use words.
After the imposition of the migrant ban by President Trump, I am even more strongly opposed to an address by President Trump in Westminster Hall.
Virtually every speaker is sometimes criticised for leaning this way or leaning that way. I would argue that I have consistently shown that I want to hear all views on an issue. I work overtime. I sometimes literally go overtime in question time to make sure as many people as possible with all sorts of different opinions are heard. And there was a time when Europhiles, pro-Europeans, used to criticise me years ago for selecting urgent questions from Brexit supporters when they were in a minority. And now there are Brexit supporters who criticise me for choosing questions or amendments from Remainers. So, in other words, at different times I've upset both sides. And like most speakers, I think it's important to give a voice to minorities in the House, not just to the government view or the majority view, but to the, if you like, the minority or the dissident view. So, on impartiality, what I say is I'm impartial between the parties and between Brexiteers and Remainers. I may have a view myself privately, but I'm impartial in Parliament. But I'm not impartial about Parliament. If I'm biased in favour of Parliament. Parliament being heard, Parliament having a right to speak, Parliament having time, Parliament being respected. by the government of the day.
I say to member, order! Resume your seat, Mr. Harper.
I'm passionate about sport, I'm passionate about social mobility, I'm passionate about higher education. And, at some stage, maybe I'd like to have a bit of time to indulge some of those enthusiasms. My idea of heaven is to be able to go in the same year to all 4 Grand Slam tennis tournaments around the world. I've been to the US Open and to the French Open, the Roland Garros, 2015, and I've been to Wimbledon many, many times. I've never been to the Australian Open. I'd like to go and watch tennis in Indian Wells in Los Angeles. I can't do these things while I'm speaker because they clash. But one of these days, maybe I'll be free.